Have you ever thought that you need a little bit more structure or organization in your life, but then you feel completely lost in knowing where to even begin creating those habits and routines that are supposed to make life easier? In today's episode, I actually want to share with you some ideas on how to choose the right routines for this season of your life. And while routines are incredibly important, it is equally important to know why you are creating them in the first place and also making sure that we are aware when we are taking them a little too far. Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renee Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast. I love this topic for this week because there are so many areas that we can create routines. And I feel like as we're heading into the start of a school year, a new school year, this is a really good time to kind of reassess what routines we have in place in our lives. I don't have children that are going to school, but I know so many of the listeners of this podcast do. And as you move into this new season of life, not just changing seasons of the year, but also just in life in general, as you're transitioning, it's a good time to kind of reevaluate what routines you have in place, whether they are created routines or routines by default, because that's just what you do and you haven't really refined what your process is in certain areas. We all have routines in our life because we all repeat things, and whether or not they are intentional routines, we all have routines that just have become routines by default. So, when you are looking at trying to choose routines that are going to make life easier, it's going to help things flow a little smoother. It's going to help reduce that stress and overwhelm that so many of us get. It's also important to know where you even need to place those routines in the first place. So, this episode should be helpful whether you have not created any specific routines at all, or if it's like maybe you have a lot of routines, but it's time to just kind of reevaluate and take kind of an inventory on what routines you have and if they're still working well for you. So, when you are choosing the structure of a routine, it's important to know why you are choosing it in the first place and also what you are building into that routine and if it's being helpful or if it's just becoming a little too much. So, we can create routines in any area that we feel overwhelmed or we just need a little bit more structure. And I will give you some ideas on how that can play out. So this could be anywhere from your bedtime. If you are putting kids to bed, it could be a bedtime routine where they have some sense of normalcy on they know exactly what to do when it's time to get to ready for bed. I'm stumbling over my words when it's time to get ready for bed because they've done it so many times in the same order that it's just automatic when it's time to get ready for bed. It could be something with household chores when it's time to do the dishes or clean up after a meal. It's just automatic. When you're done eating, you go and do these things because you've repeated it so many times. It could be something related to meals or grocery shopping or money or budgeting or health and exercise. Any area of your life can truly become a routine when it's repeated over and over. And what we're trying to do is make them more intentional. So we actually condense the time frame and it becomes more efficient. And then we have more free time to do the things that we want to do rather than worrying about all this stuff that needs to be done. So routines can be an absolute blessing, but if we're not careful, we can create routines that become a little too rigid and create too much structure in our life. The whole focus of having routines is to condense different areas reduce the stress to actually create more time so that you feel more free and you feel more flexible. And when we're taking it a little too far and creating too many routines and too much structure that we don't feel that we have the flexibility, we know that's a big red flag, and we need to stop and reassess and maybe evaluate which routines actually need to be let go. So, to help with this, I actually started with 5 routines that I really wanted to focus on. And I think that these are 5 routines that work so well for everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in, because this can work well for kids, and it can even work well for adults, whether you have children, whether you're grandparents, no matter what age you are. These are 5 really good foundational routines that you can create a routine that works well for you, and you can just have these basics. So, the first 5 that I would recommend that anybody has to help them get their life in order that has some semblance of structure while creating more flexibility is number 1, your morning routine. And this is the routine that you want to have in place to have some you time before all of the stress of the day, all of the asks that come to you and take up your time throughout the day. This is time that you get to yourself before your day with anybody else starts, and allows you to really pour into what you need before you are serving others. And this is a really important routine to do some of those things that are calming, but also like spiritual things. So if you are finding that you need some time to do a Bible study, or you just need time to say a 30-second prayer, or maybe you need actual like longer devotional time, this is a really, really good time to do that, because then when you can like you can take that time right away in the morning, you end up showing up better for the rest of the day, and you have a better sense of being able to serve others, because you know how they always say it's like that corny saying of you can't pour from an empty cup. But that's exactly the case. Like, if you are draining yourself and never taking the time for yourself, you are going to drain yourself. And it's much harder to show up for others when you are absolutely burned out. The second foundational routine that I would recommend is your meal planning routine. Having some structure around planning your meals, grocery shopping, snack times, whatever it is going to be incredibly helpful to help reduce that time, because that is such a big part of our lives to keep everybody fed around us, whether it's just ourselves or our families. And number 3, the foundational routine is the daily 7 home routine. And this is condensing small chores together to create a routine that helps you keep up with your home, so that you have that default go to when your house feels like a tornado went through it and everything is falling apart. You know your default routine that you can go to just reset your home very quickly without it feeling overwhelming. It's a very important routine to have. Number 4 is your movement routine. This is your exercise, getting your body going and putting it into motion. It could be a walk, it could be a gym, it could be a bike ride, it could be just dancing in the kitchen, because that's all you can do and all you have time for is to blast the music for 5 minutes and just move your body. You can do whatever you want, but to have some sort of default routine you can go to for movement. Number 5 is your budget routine. Stress comes so often from money. And whether it's personal stress or relationship stress, money can be a huge factor in that. And being able to have a budget routine that gives you some structure and a plan with your money is so important. So these 5 I think are all just incredibly important. And that's why I call them the 5 first foundational routines. So those are the 5 I recommend. If you have no idea where to start, these are the ones that I would recommend doing. And I actually created 2 different um like tools for you to use. And if you go to audityourhabits.com, and it's all in the show notes, but you can get 2 different things there. You can get a free guide called Audit Your Habits, And this is going to be almost like journaling prompts about or surrounding these 5 routines to just get you thinking about these routines and what you're currently doing in your life, and so that you can start recognizing where you might want to make some changes. And then the second tool that you can get is your organized life blueprint. And you can get it right at audityourhabits.com. But your organized life blueprint is it's going to have that audit your habits guide within it, but then it's going to continue and it's actually going to help you to evaluate what you want to change and to create a routine in each of those 5 areas, so to get you started in building these routines around your life. And it takes you through this process over the course of 8 weeks, so it doesn't, seem super overwhelming. You can just do the small lesson in that week and then implement that one routine, get used to it, then move on to the next one. So it kind of works together, but it works very slowly. You can go through it faster if you want to. You can take longer if you need to, but it's going to help you set up and implement those routines in those 5 areas to help you get started. But if you are looking at these and you're like, okay, I've got these covered. I don't necessarily need these 5 because I feel really good about these 5. There might be other areas that you want to look at to evaluate if you want to set up a routine. And these are probably going to be areas that feel a little scattered or frazzled or overwhelming, and you just feel like it just needs a little bit more organization. And some of these might be like an evening routine after dinner, it might be after school, it might be a bedtime routine, it might be even a snack time routine. Like when it's snack time for your kids, what is happening and what is the cleanup process afterwards? It's just creating those simple things. It might be a weekly planning routine to create your day stack and know what the week ahead is planning to bring. And it might be a Sunday morning church routine to just get your family ready for church and out the door with less stress. It might be a work routine, like what do you do to get set up to have a productive day at work? And what are you doing at the end of the day to close out your work so that you are ready for the day ahead and you're not stressed and worrying about work during your time off with your family. So it's simple things like that that you just start recognizing where you feel overwhelmed or frazzled and creating super simple routines that will help you in these areas, so you have a default to go to when you start feeling a little overwhelmed. So you want to choose your routines wisely, but also if you start creating too many routines, you want to take a look and see if you need to let some go, and so that you can feel a little more flexible. We need to kind of find that balance that works well for us, and the number of routines I have has absolutely nothing to do with the number of routines you have, and vice versa. Like everybody is going to be very different. Some people will prefer to have more routines because that actually creates more flexibility in their life. Some people will need less routines and they just need that handful of very specific routines that work well for them, and that's all they can stick to, because if they do more than that, they're going to start feeling overwhelmed. And when you start learning about yourself, where you need them and where you need to let them go, you just have to pay attention to that. But as time goes on, you will start to recognize that and learn for yourself what works well for you without comparing it to what others are doing, because what they're doing is not necessarily going to be what is going to work for you. So, like I said, routines are so important, but you also need to know why you're creating them in the first place and knowing exactly when we're taking them a little too far. So, to give you kind of an overview, when you think about routines, they should be very simple. A routine should be a short series of habits that are stacked together to create more efficiency. They should be making things easier, not harder. And it should be something that is repeatable so that you no longer have to really think about what you're doing as much. So it should reduce that stress. And it might not be the case right away. It might take a few times of repeating your routine over and over once you create it before it starts becoming more automatic. But over time, as you repeat it, in the same way, you should start not having to think about it so much. And that's when it starts creating more freedom for you. So once you choose the routines that work best for your life, then you actually start pairing them together, like I did for those first 5 foundational routines, because then that is what helps you to start creating a system that gives you structure while also providing more flexibility. So they work together to create this system for your life that just helps you to be able to enjoy life more. So I'm hoping this is kind of helpful and a good pep talk for you to really think about what routines you want to be creating in your life and where you need to maybe create some new ones or to edit the ones you have or to just let some go if they are just too much or to simplify. Like when you are editing your routines, think about simplifying routines. You want them to be so simple because if it's a lot of work and it's stressful to even remember what the routine is, that is not going to be helpful. That's just creating more stress. So we want to simplify things, and that is when routines become such a benefit for our lives. So, like I said, I did have some routine ideas for you so that you can start to begin to evaluate and choose the right routines for this season of life. Because as life goes on, you're probably going to shift things around a little bit. And you might have very different routines now than you did 6 months ago, or you'll have a year down the road. But being able to adjust and be able to kind of evaluate as you go is really important. But I truly think that the 5 foundational ones, while the routine itself might change, you're always going to want 5 routines in those 5 areas. That's why I think that they are the most important to start with. But that's just my personal opinion, and that is what I teach. So it's number 1 is your morning routine. Number 2 is your meal planning routine. 3 is your daily 7 home routine. 4 is your budget routine, and 5, or I'm sorry, 4, I'm reading ahead. 4 is your movement routine, and then 5 is your budget routine. But once you move on in different seasons of life, you might have different routines, like some additional ones, like an evening routine, an after school routine, a bedtime routine, a snack time routine, a weekly planning routine to plan out that day stack, a Sunday morning church routine, or even a work routine. And there are so many others that you could have. Like the options are endless. You just need to find what works for you and be willing to test and tweak and then let it go. If it's not working, you're not doing anything wrong. You just need to let it go because that is not working and you need to find something else. So I hope this was encouraging for you. We do have a Q&A episode coming up very soon. So if there is something that you have been listening to the podcast and you're not sure, you either want me to clarify something or you just have a question about something, whether I've touched on it or I haven't, please feel free to send us an email or to do a speak pipe message. And both of those links are in our show notes. You can find our email address and you can find our speak pipe voicemail. You can ask a question in either area. And I'm so appreciative of everybody that has sent in questions already. I have not been able to respond to everyone so far. So if you sent in questions and you haven't gotten a response from me, please forgive me. I am planning to respond to everybody, so I will get back to everybody. But I just very much appreciate you taking the time to send in those questions because I think it'll be really fun when we take that Q&A episode and do a whole rundown to answer your questions relating to routines and habits and systems and or anything that you have sent a question about, I guess. So hopefully, this was helpful for you, and I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful week, and I will see you on the next episode. Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.